Okay, greetings everybody. It is I, Umber Rays, with a slightly deeper voice because I'm still on recovery. Gonna do my best not off too terribly much in the process of making this video, but as you know, being sick, that's a bit of a challenge. So today we're gonna be taking a look at Lizzle, or uh, like basically that's her Japanese name. I assume that the global version will be Lizzle or Lizzle. Which I think is supposed to be sounding a little bit like the word thistle. Like, if you just look at Limit Burst, kind of a little bit of a crystalline flower theme, which makes me think, flowers, thistles to go with the branches, the fact that her, dagger is very, like, spiky and whatnot. That's basically why I'm calling her that for now. At least until Global gets her, and then we can get a confirmation on what her actual global name is. But yes, Lizzle. Let's talk about Lizzle and do an examination as well as a bit of a test today. So starting off, Lizzle is a 100 cost wind elemental unit, the next in the line of the Another Story characters, and to be fair, this is a character that I was less than enthused about because of its element, and that will come into play in this review of just being like, well, is it better than what Wind already has? Does Wind need another 100 cost unit? Could this have gone to a different element and been more successful and more valued there? Well, we'll take a look at all of that and more in this video. So to start off, let's talk about her base stuff, looking at Wotv Calc. So taking a look at Wotv Calc, you can see 3 move, 2 jump naturally. 100 cost is a limited unit. That is a mistake on there. Has Lancer and Monk as sub-jobs, which are not invaluable, but are not completely synergistic with main weapon type and her main part of her kit, which is a little bit of a knock against her. Now, taking a look at her Trust Mastery. Her Trust Mastery here feels a little bit more like what we would call a stat stick, because this piece of equipment, 314 HP, 5 agility, and 12 defense, is pretty good across, especially for this character, but for quite a few characters, 5 speed is not nothing. As for the ability, a 25% agility boost for 3 turns and 15 AOE resistance is also a net positive, making basically this TMR was essentially made for this character, but would be good on quite a few other characters as well. The TMR gets a big old, stamp of approval just because it does fit in quite well to a lot of things that this character would like to be doing. So let's head back over here and take a look. Master ability basically is 10% attack for herself and AOE resistance. She will be quite difficult to kill with AOEs by the looks of things, but if you are targeting more with single attacks, that is where she will start to fall apart a little bit more. And talking about her agility, that also might be a considerable knock against her, funnily enough, but we'll go into that more in a second here. As for her dream enhancement, we'll just talk about that now, getting into the 140-ish, initial AP of 15%, increased accuracy of 15, and an increase to her job level 25 ability. All of these are net positives for her, and would be net positives for any character, so not really too terribly much to examine here, just good stuff. Alright, now before we go any further, I would like to switch back over screen here, switching over to a wind elemental party as we load in our friend unit and take a peek at what she looks like at 140. So in a full wind elemental party, you can get an idea for what her stats would be for PvE. 7,500 HP, 1,379 attack, 22 defense, 6 spirit, and 113 in terms of agility and dexterity. Luck is not that much, and as you can see, her move and agility, her move and jump did get a boost. Now, what's interesting, even before going into all of this character is not an evade character at all. Coming in before this update, looking at her, I was kind of thinking that this was going to be a 100 cost wind version of Yuffie, where just she would have HP drain, and that's not the case. She's more of an accuracy character and much more of a brawler type character, so that's good because I would have been really annoyed. I think it would have also been kind of poopy to just have, a fire evade character into a wind evade character and at a higher cost, potentially a little bit usurping it. So I'm glad that these two do feel different in terms of what their kits ended up being. As for resistances, big thing, toad resistance as well as blind and stomp resistance. Looking at attack type resistance is pretty good net positive with her equipment across the board right now. Being fairly tanky against multiples types of damage, but not totally immune. Ice Spear could be very, very concerning, and it could be possible that you run into an Ice Spear in a limited cost event just because Victoria is still a thing, and Ice Spear doesn't feel impossible for the future. That might be a weakness for her, but she does have pretty good resistances across multiple damage types. Now looking at her kit, her Limit Burst does give an chance to inflict blind and a pretty good chance of inflicting blind. It isn't massive AoE and its cost is not incredibly high, so it is very, very possible that you use this ability and the AI is good at using this. If the target does have blind, they will lose defense penetration by 30%, so a little bit of a snowball effect. But again, this unit really, really is not a, how do I say this? It's not an evade unit, so blind is just kind of a little bit of a benefit, but is not going to be a certain huge thing for her. I'm not even convinced that you build this unit remotely like an evade unit, just because there's not that much evade support here. But still, the Limit Burst does have its benefits and will probably be overall a net positive for this character, seeing that the cost is not that bad. As for Monk, does have the increased attack and defense penetration as well as restoring HP and regen. I think that's important because this character can resist a good amount of damage, and if she is resisting amount of damage, maybe she gets in a heal, kind of just wears down the opponent, but if not, then I don't know, not amazing. Also gives 100% hit chance, so there is some Monk potential of being used, but if you do, I think you're using it for the attack buff and the HP restore, and maybe the 100% hit chance, and that's it. As for Lancer, kind of the same thing. Increasing critical rate, piercing damage, plus knockback is always interesting. Not super relevant, but another 100% hit chance as well as a critical rate. But most of this that we're looking at here, I think it's really dependent on the opponent for whether you're going Lancer or Monk. Both are potentially viable, but hey, maybe you just want to run her main job. Main job does have in its subpart these two abilities right here that I've highlighted. One with an incredibly short range that has a chance to give a couple of status effects, poison, paralyze, and immobilize, but it depends if you can even get that off. I don't think you're going to be running this character with high faith, which decreases the chances happening. Again, she is not an evade unit, so if she is taking damage, especially single target damage, could be a major concern for her. As for the last ability, decreasing agility for 3 turns for the target and dealing damage. This ability, I don't know why, but it's actually not correct, showing the correct range on Wotv Calc, as you can see here. Again, very short range. I'm just not excited about this. And in terms of mobility of the unit, while it is normally a plus, I am slightly concerned about it. I'll explain more about that in a bit once we get into actual testing. Now, looking at the main part of her kit, we have a bunch of different stuff. Base attack is a small mod, but if it does kill a unit, it does give her some AP generation, which is interesting because I don't think that this will have that high of a chance of proccing, but it is a low cost AP, so you could deal, run a few of her bigger abilities first, which then gives her the chance to potentially use a quick follow-up. She is definitely fast enough that she could lap certain units. I just don't feel like with the damage mod on this that it's going to be incredibly likely that this is ever going to happen all that often. So, yeah. Next up, grants Protect and Shell for herself. By granting that, she will, if Protect or Shell are still active, gives her a 33 AP consumption reduction. Synergistically, well, fine. Protect and Shell can be removed by certain units, so it's just okay to me. It's not amazing, but if you're getting the AP consumption down off of it, that's probably enough of a benefit. Next up, this ability, which is one of her AOEs, it's improved later to reduce counters by 100%, which is good. 165% damage on it, absorbs 30% of the damage, is AoE, so you might get multiple units. Decreases healing power as well, so makes it less likely that the other units heal back up after. Fine for if you're going up against, I guess, the counter for reducing healing and certain other teams, but I don't know if it'll make that big of a difference, or I'm that about this. I think it's just kind of okay. Next up, this one allows you to select 2 units. So in the range panel, you can select multiple unit, is a single one. Decreases slash resistance by 25% for 3 turns, and a 165 mod, which is good. Probably one of the abilities I like the best on her, just because I like these select abilities. I think they're cool. Next up, this is definitely the showpiece of the unit. Absorb 30% of the damage done for 3 turns for allies, and a 40% attack boost for herself, and granting Dispel Auto Revive. Obviously, getting rid of Auto Revive is just very, very strong. 40% attack boost makes this unit stronger, and absorbing 30% of the damage done is pretty big for multiple units. The question is, again, whether you can use this in the amount of turns, because this is going to be casted at at the start of battle, and then she's going to be able to get in there and make use of this. But will your allies? I think that at most your allies are probably going to get 2 turns out of this in a fight. That's fine. It's not amazing, but just the differential in speed of this unit might make really, first of all, there's the question of whether or not she just runs ahead directly into battle, leaving the other units behind, like Glassy, for instance, in my party, as well as Doom, around 100 speed, but that's slower by a good margin compared to others. Even Tifa with a TMR built for boosting her, just doesn't compete with her speed. So, 2 units might be hanging back, especially with lower mobility, when she's up in the front, just dealing as much damage as possible. But these, the back units just might not get that much HP restore out of this, especially if they haven't really even gotten that much damage. But that's a very, very, suppose depends on the fight. Last but not least is her job 25, break physical barrier for target, 200% mod. Reduces physical damage 50% for 1 time, so it destroys a physical barrier on the opponent, not a magical barrier, and gives her a kind of physical barrier, but only for 1 time. Doesn't feel super like as strong, but a 50% barrier is nothing to really, be like, oh well. As for that, also dispelling buffs and everything, this is a strong job level 25 ability that will be strong in multiple occasions, and I think overall it is pretty good. Her kit does feel synergistic with herself. It feels like it can be supportive of other units, but overall her mobility is a concern because she just feels so much faster than other units, and with her higher move and jump, which is kind of baked into her support. Like this one is an agility, accuracy, and defense penetration. You're just running that. And this one is a move and jump one, which if you look at the other ones from the other attack, I guess you could go for attack and strike, or maybe critical rate and attack, or just HP. But this is definitely like one of her stronger ones to have higher mobility, but it does potentially just get her so far ahead of the other units on her team that maybe she just ignores that, goes straight ahead, and then just kind of ignores your allies. And the AI just like, well, I can attack an opponent because I have the range and I have the movement. Just goes and does that, and maybe doesn't run too terribly many buffs. That is definitely a concern, I think, with this unit. Whether or not it's a deal breaker or not will depend upon, further testing of actually in that PvP setting. But let's go in here and see what we can do. Of course, we got some zombies here that are going to be running their buffs. Not too terribly much. As you can see, she's already way ahead of our other guys. 53 AP start, 8,000 HP. Looks pretty good at the start of a battle. But even now, just you can see we're, this unit can already get in and just basically start running in and attacking with or without. So let's start off by running this. Give that HP renewal. So immediately, if we were to go in, and I don't know if Classy actually has anything, we could get a bit of a HP restore, which is definitely something, but not going to get there quite yet. So let's our units in, start working on running all of our barriers, our AP ups, and everything nice like that, to get an idea of how tanky this unit. And for the purpose of this, I did want to test just a really big ice team today, because ice range is definitely strong against her, but I think it's one of the things that's going to be preying upon wind for the next week. I don't think it will really be other elemental teams. She already has a pretty good amount of accuracy, which means that wind versus fire evade is probably a fair matchup. Versus Dark and Sephiroth, she's capable of getting through barriers as well as dealing a good amount of damage and just restoring, which is probably enough. And she doesn't depend on auto revive and whatnot. So my major thought for a lot of this was just, well, let's put her up against one of her worst matchups. It's not exactly overly fair in terms of it, but this is the thing that I think she is going to struggle with, is dealing with this kind of team where ice is going to be the thing that's going to be like really, really going. It's one of the worst matchups that it has. So that's kind of was my big thought about this. Also, the other thing is with, if she is running in effectively, like she's just like, well, I have the range, I have the mobility, I'm going to go after the team before anything else. Well, let's just see what that kind of looks like if she was going up against this team. And as you can see, my Nasha, who is level 140, definitely not a slouch in terms of stats. like, this is the kind of brick wall that she would have to face either with snow or whatnot. Now, of course, this wind elemental team is kind of looking to go up against Earth. On JP, there are a good number of Earth elemental teams, but not an incredible number of Earth elemental teams. And so that's a consideration for what I'm looking at in this terms of a matchup. Also, Peachin already did a dark versus wind, and that matchup seemed to be pretty fair. But you can see right here just the type of damage that she's doing, whether it be her limit burst or whatnot. She is having a particularly difficult time. Eliza's not particularly known for being really, really damage resilient, for example. But you can see probably the biggest thing, though, with getting off her blind on this team. So Ice might be looking to want to get more accuracy, but also you look at this and that doesn't exactly bode well for her. So, you know what, we're just gonna run a few other types of buffs here. Get that AP reduction, how that's going. And let's just see, just scouring across the board about the types of damage that we are capable of doing. Maybe even just moving a little further away so I can just get... Again, Eliza, like, ice ranged was already such a good matchup, so I'm more curious. In at least this initial one, having seen Dark versus Wind, about how capable this would be, like how potential she would be able to get in close against a wind element or against ice elemental characters and start dealing damage. And you can see potential of surviving, especially running that protect, does up her chances of survival versus this kind of team. But in combination with either just a good tank or whatnot, could it really survive? Not really any protection against immobility, which would definitely hurt this character a lot. And if she is getting ahead of the tank, then tank hate generation might not matter. If, for instance, Sadali and Jum are just constantly in the back of the field and she's just moving forward, that might be a reason to not run her mobility up. But also that will require more testing, I think. But yeah, Ice still looks quite strong against her. But you know what? We'll test just a few other abilities before we call this one a video. And just to show comparative damages with the similar type of party, how much damage we're doing versus this entire team. Gotta admit that Nasha just looks like solid brick wall at this point. No, we have some new players entering the game, such as it were. And one last final look at just damage numbers. As you can see, even against Jum, considerably more damage if we were to just look in towards a kind of more maybe mirror matchup. Definitely capable of dealing damage in, as you can see as well. One of the things that I think is really, really cool is just the fact that she does have access to some things that are just really good for a damage dealer, such as barrier removal, Support, HP restore makes her very self-reliant, which is good because it does feel like she is going to constantly be ahead of a lot of other units. So let's we'll let her go to town and see how she does against some of these units. There you saw that little bit of auto revive removal, which is pretty cool that we were able to get that in there. So yeah, we'll just finish this up with a bit of a summary. That's the wrong one. Umbra. Okay. So Lizzle, 100 cost brawler unit slash support, definitely has some cool stuff with her HP restore, which is a considerable factor. I think she is a strong unit. I have no doubt that she is a strong unit, between some, capable of status effects, multiple damage types, barrier destroyer, and create reduction of slash resistance, even though that's not an incredibly big priority with Wind right now, as Wind is kind of all over the place in terms of damage types. High mobility and HP absorb with some accuracy and blind shenanigans. All of that is particularly very strong for her. I think that she will have some definite good matchups against different elements such as Dark and elements maybe where they didn't have necessarily good matchups before. I am concerned about mobility. I feel that mobility might reduce her odds. Like, just the fact that she has such a good amount of initial AP, it depends on the map, where like it could just make her AI not worry about buffs too much and instead incredibly focus on just funneling in on going over and killing the opponent, which could be just an overall net negative, because if she's not with a group, there really isn't, it's like a huge amount of point for the opponent AI to not just use single target attacks against her, since it is more effective and most of her resistance does rely on AoE. So yeah, that is a bit of a concern. I mean, it will take just testing to see how much I really feel that that's going to be a problem. Other than that, nothing feels really game-changing, and the question is whether or not Wind really needed her. Between Sidali, Glassy, and Joom, or Sidali with Halloween Leela, like, Wind is not an element that feels like it really needed another 100 cost character, and this unit doesn't feel like it would make matchups that much more assured. It doesn't feel like Wind is going to have any better or worse situation after, you know, the addition of this character to it, because Wind already has just some great stuff and is already one of the current strongest elements in the game. But yeah, that's my feelings basically on this character. I won't argue that she isn't great, that she isn't a a net plus for the element. It's just Wind is already so competitive, and if you already have a completely stacked Wind team, I don't know if this character is enough to really make you go all the way, pull this character, build her, and then like do all the extra stuff that needs to be done for that. So anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and see you next time.